Good morning, traders. Today is Wednesday, July 20th. My name is Charles, and this is the Pirate Traders live stream. All right, well, I am coming into today pretty bullish. I would say neutral to bullish, and I'm going to explain why. I saw what happened the night before last when the market built up all this support right on top of a previous balance area as being good, strong hands, longer-term traders entering the market. So the fact that we had such a bullish day yesterday would be a confirmation of that. We had a quadruple distribution yesterday, and we got a spike up at the end of the day. We didn't quite close inside the spike, but pretty close to it. So I would still describe that as pretty bullish. And then the overnight last night traded higher as well. So all of that's pretty bullish. And it could mean we're looking at a new trend to the upside with value being overlapping to higher, for the last 3 days in a row now. So all of those things are bullish to me. So what does that mean? It means the market is likely to keep going higher today, or it might spend a day going sideways trying to absorb this excess. The third option would be that we need to pull back to absorb all the excess created yesterday with the big move higher. That to me is the least likely scenario to take place, but of course it is possible. So let's just walk through what to expect as the market opens here this morning. Well, first things first, the overnight inventory is completely neutral, right? They're closing exactly the same place we closed last night. So there's no real counter auction to look for there. So we're opening inside the previous day's range. That tells us that we're most likely going to get chop, that the market is going to grind up and down this morning trying to figure out what it wants to do. So we're essentially monitoring that chop. As far as to the downside, we just basically go from each of these lines one to the next. So it'll push down. It'll almost certainly come down and repair the first week reference. And then is that enough to bring in the buyers to continue higher? If not, we'll look for it to come down and test the base of the I period single prints up. Is that enough to bring in the buyers for continuation higher? If not, we basically just start monitoring for continuation lower, just like that. Each reference that we have, is that enough to bring in the support to turn around and send the market higher? Okay. If we break below 39.05, which was the high from 2 days ago, also the half back from yesterday, I'd start to get a little bit bearish. But until then, I really assume one of these is going to act as support in the early morning chop here, and we'll turn around. So that's kind of what I'm monitoring to the downside. And then to the upside, it's first, can we get above yesterday's high, 39.43? Find support there. If we can get above yesterday's high and find support, the target becomes testing the overnight high at 39.65 or 39.64. If we can get up there and get above the overnight high, we then see, do we find support there? If we do, then the target becomes filling the gap above all the way to 40.15. So once again, we're looking for chop here first thing in the morning. Market to grind around. If it can get above yesterday's high, we look to target the overnight high. If it can get above there, the target becomes 40.14 to the upside. Let's see what the market has for us. Let the chop begin. $777. Don't you think the daily is overbought? Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see the daily pulling back, looking for support. In a worst case scenario, even all the way back down to this trend line. But that seems less probable. But of course, we've got multiple balances here. We've got the downtrend, right? That was resistance on the market. And then we had this big, sort of balancing area that we had right here. That was also resistance on the market. And we broke through both of those yesterday. So the market is free. It's free as a bird. It can fly. That doesn't mean it will. It just means it can. Okay, so we're looking to repair 39.2850. See, is that enough to bring in the buyers to turn around and head back through the opening price? Rockingham, potential look above and fail? Sure, it's potential, but doesn't mean that that's going to happen. And that would be a monitoring for continuation lower situation, right? So like I said, we're looking for a repair there. Is that enough to get us higher? If not, support there. Is that enough to get us higher? If not, repair there. Is that enough to get us higher? If not, and we start to pull back down below 39.05, then we're short, monitoring for continuation to the downside. Do we get enough support? No. Do we get enough support? So on and so forth. So if we're going to get a look above and fail of this previous range, we'll be in a short for it. But there's no reason to think about that right now. You got values higher. You got overnight trading overlapping to higher from yesterday's range. This market is bullish. So we should be looking for support. All right, so once again, if we push above yesterday's high, if we push above 39.4350, that would be bullish. And then we would look for the confirmation of support So we look to push above, come back down, find some support in this general area. That support is confirmation of the bullishness, and then we target the overnight high up at 39.64. First, they got to get above yesterday's high, then they got to create the support. But if they do, overnight high is in play. Return on investment velocity. That's a good name. Is the NQ working on that? Let's take a look. Yes, sir. Same exact thing for NQ. Now that they pushed above yesterday's high, I wasn't watching it, but obviously this node I assume was support. They came back down and backfilled that. So the target is now the overnight high. If they can get above the overnight high, come back down and find support, you can look for continuation higher from there. The NQ is bullish. Next major resistance, 12, basically 12,500. So if it can get above that overnight high and find support, of course they have to find that support. That sweet, sweet new buyer. But if they do, they can get quite a pump. So both markets, potential to break out to the upside today. Can they do it? Scott, Bitcoin never came back down last night. The FOMO is building. Yeah, I know the FOMO is building. I opened up Facebook this morning and there was like 10 articles that were like bullish about crypto. People making predictions. I was like, there they go. Cue the bullish. Remember that old meme? Like, just like on cue. Everything goes from bearish to bullish. Like flicking a switch. All right, well, the chop fest continues. The sellers here are weak. So if the market gets back above yesterday's high, we should get a little pop of short covering. Element, what's the bear thesis at the moment? Well, needing to balance off the excess from yesterday. So the fact that we had such a big move so quickly from the open, there's two ways to balance off excess. You can go sideways and just have a rotational day where the market goes nowhere up here. Or we might need to pull back down with price, looking for support for continuation higher. But to me, those are the least likely thing to take place here today. The more time I spend trading, particularly intraday day trading like this, the more respect I have for momentum. When they've got the momentum, they can just keep pushing it. This day right here is such a perfect example of that. When we closed, remember we closed in a spike down. It was a vicious day of it was like we opened, boring, 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 boring. Days doing nothing, just bouncing around, going nowhere. Then liquidation break, new money sellers piling on, boom, spike down at the end of the day, closing at the lows. That is a brutal day of price action. But price is just an advertising mechanism. That's all it is. Value at the end of the day was higher. And I remember at the end of that day, Brigade members can go back and double check this. I remember saying how completely bizarre it was that we had kept most of the volume and spent most of the time that day at the high of the day and kept the value area overlapping to higher from the previous day, even though we just had this massive bearish move. And that's, of course, the signal, momentum, right? Price action was just fighting against momentum for a second. But there were those buyers just waiting. So right now, that is my thesis, that they have some momentum to the upside. And I'm going to need to see a day where value is overlapping to lower to convince me it's over. Jason, smash, smash, likey, likey. I should make a banner that says that. Yes, please. We got 170 people hanging out, but only 49 likes. I wonder if there's a cool 51 of you willing to smash that thumbs up. Arcalion, there's only one me, sadly. No one would ever try to match you. Who would dare? Element, so are you waiting for the chop to end to go long? I'm waiting for the market to give me a bullish signal, which would be getting above yesterday's high and then finding support. Until then, they're just going to chop. Could we break 39.90 and go to hell? Could we break 39.90 and go to hell? I'm not sure what that means. You mean break it to the upside and then fail and pull back down? Of course, sure. All momentum comes to the end sooner or later. But like I said, if we can get above the overnight high, so first get above yesterday's high, look for support there, then get above the overnight high, look for support there. If we can do that, I'm telling you, this thing can take off. Think about it just moving from one large cumulative node to the next. Very little resistance between. So you're looking for resistance if at 39.90. Yeah, that doesn't stand out to me. It's possible. More like 96. But if you made it all the way from there to there, might as well just head a little bit higher to where those sweet, sweet two-sided trade is waiting. John Lasher and Q starting to push upward. And maybe not. Yeah, still just chopping right now. It's good at the moment. As long as it's above that opening price, above yesterday's high, it's okay. I'll admit my inverse Wall Street bet strategy is confused right now. That's up to you, man. You're playing with fire both directions on that. All right, so now we're looking once again to repair the weak L period low at 39.28. Is that enough to bring in the buyers to turn around and head back up to the high? If not a test of the overnight low, that one's a little tricky because we got the base of the single prints up right next to it. So it'll likely come down and find support there. But first is just repairing this 1 week reference of just turning off this one magnet. Is that enough? Let's see. All right, so no support there. Ooh, poor low. Weak high and a poor low. You know what that means. This is nothing but short-term traders picking each other's pockets. Classic chop. But anyway, no support there on the repair of that weak reference. Increases the odds we need to test the overnight low as the chop continues. Welcome, Hink. Thank you for the sub. If you're out there watching right now and you haven't subscribed, take the time, push the red button. Okay, poor low repaired. As long as these ticks remain below the zero line, The testing the overnight low remains in play. Mateus, yep, nothing has changed. Go back and watch the first 5 minutes. We're still in the chop zone. That means the market hasn't made up its mind one way or another. It's just short-term traders picking each other's pockets, taking quick little scalps, looking to make a buck. They have not picked a direction yet. All right, well, obviously we're heading down to test that overnight low, and we'll look for support at the base of the I period single prints from yesterday, 39.21. Kathy, internals look good? Question mark. Good? No. I mean, they look bearish. They're all trending down. So I guess if you want the market to break lower, they look good. But it's too early to call just yet. We're still in the chop zone. Once I get a clear signal for bearishness or bullishness, I'll change the banner. ES Flamma. I'll repeat this joke. It's worthy of a retell. Since joining the Pirate Brigade, my wife keeps asking me what my favorite letter is, expecting me to say R. But really, it's C that I desire. Or the C that I desire. Sorry, fucked it up. All right, well, we're finding some support, getting those ticks back above the zero line, but we don't have great taper on the low. So that increases the odds the market needs to come back down there and do some more two-sided trade. So now the question, does previous support become resistance? Does this node right around the opening price now act as resistance, smacking those ticks back down below the zero line? All right, so we are getting resistance here in this node right below the opening price. So if they smack those ticks back down below the zero line, they're probably heading back down to put in some more volume at the low with that bad taper. The chop continues. Choppity chop chop. Yeah. Well, goldfish, what is a bad taper? What is a good taper? Well, a good taper, look at yesterday's high. That's a good taper. So 8,000 contracts, 3,000, 2,000, 600, 300. It's just less and less volume the higher the price goes. You can also visually see it with the candlestick. So they get smaller and smaller and smaller the higher they go. That is showing you the market is running out of people willing to do business up there. So that's a good place for the market to flip and reverse because there's no one left to do business there. Whereas if you have this, where it's like 21, 13, 800, 16, 16, you don't have that good taper where it's less and less and less. It means there's probably still people willing to do business down here. So it's not as strong as a weak reference. It's not as strong as single prints. It's probably the least important of all the signals we look at the taper. You can leave bad taper behind all the time. But it's one more piece of data to consider. Especially, like I say, if you know you're in a chop zone and then you see that you get resistance. Whoops. You see that you get resistance and the ticks push back below the zero line, well, then you go, okay, well, probably they want to come down and mess with this taper. James, does that bad taper at the bottom mean more selling probably? So the market is always looking for a price level, right? Where it can do business, where there are both buyers and sellers that want to exchange contracts. And so that's what we call areas of liquidity. And the market is basically just being sucked from one area of liquidity to the next all day, every day. All the moves the market does, it doesn't go backwards like that. But all the moves that the market does is basically just hunting for people that are willing to do business at this particular level or that, right? So when you have bad taper at the low, it just means there's people willing to do business down here. And that doesn't mean the market has to come down and do business down there. But if it's starting to give you other signals, like the ticks getting below the zero line, that it doesn't have, that's a signal we don't have the buyers, right? Getting below the zero line is a signal there are more sellers than buyers. So if the market is currently at this price level, and there's more sellers than buyers, it's got to go find a new price level somewhere lower where there's people waiting to do business. So that's when you go, oh, well, with the bad taper at the low, that's probably an area people want to do business. So that's why I say if they get the ticks below the zero line, we're probably heading down to do some more business at the low. You know what else is a thing that will make the market do business? The overnight low. You know what else is a thing? The base of the single prints. So there's plenty of business waiting to be had down here. Unless the buyers can get it above yesterday's high, right? In which case, new business can begin up here. These traders figure out they're not going to get a chance and they got to move their orders up. But until then, Chopville, USA. Chilling with Dylan. How much do you care about a spike base after it's been broken? Not at all. Not at all. Any previous reference, once it's been passed through, is no longer important. Actually, that's not true. Previous days, high and low and stuff like that, there are certain levels that are still important. Balance area, high and low. Andrew G, does the same go for NQ? Which ramble are you responding to? Yes, whatever I was talking about when you asked that question, the same goes for NQ. No, NQ's got good taper on the low. Good taper on the low for both the current 30 minutes and for the day. And they are about to break the initial balance to the upside, or sorry, break the A period to the upside. So they got above yesterday's high. They found support. That's bullish. Now they're about to test the overnight high. If they can get above that and find support, it's all systems go. Fly me to the moon and pay me for my long contract. Okay, poor high. We expect to push away. Looking for support to come back and repair that poor high. Come on, market, repair that poor high. Bringing in more buyers for continuation. So like I said, because, it was a weak high in the A period and now poor in the B, we should expect a little bit of a pop when some of these shorts cover as the stops begin to fill. And we are now looking for support at 39.43-ish, this general area. There you go. There's your pop. Little short covering. So I am going to say I am bullish now as long as we stay above the opening price. We're looking for support right here around the open for continuation to head up and test that overnight high. Zoo, what was buyable about 39.25? It was the repair of the weak reference. So remember that, I forget exactly where that weak reference was from yesterday. It was the L period low. So this right here was weak. And so what happened is the market came down. It repaired that weak reference by passing through it. Actually, it was the A period low because it was right next to that. So it came down, it repaired that weak reference, and then that magnet that was pulling on price disappeared. And when that magnet disappeared, the buyers stepped in, took it back up. But what will be truly important is when they pull back down to this high, do new buyers step in up here? This is just the shorts covering. So now we want to see new business for continuation. All right, so with the printing of the C period here, we've created a little poor high, increasing the odds we're going to get a push away. We can look for support in that push away right at 39.44, which is the base of those B period single prints. Once they repair that poor high, they will begin the, well, there you go. They began the process of one time framing higher, which is bullish for continuation to the upside. As long as they keep the C period high above the B period high, the market will continue to trend, obviously. And then the same thing in the D period and E and so on forth. So on forth. The market is trending higher. Act accordingly. Thank you all so very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. I sure do appreciate those 103 likes. They mean the world to me. Thank you all so very much, and I will see you here tomorrow morning. If you're a member of the brigade, let's ride. I'll see you on the private stream.